So,
Do I need to go and find my friends now? Can I skip that?
yeah, no, we'll get to the finding of friends, and we can share our public keys together and have a lacquer chat. I promise. There's also some general rooms and stuff, but I'll explain sort of everything there. I just wanted to. This is just because Simon and Neil. I thought that I'd sort of show you a really great article from Simon that I really liked. That sort of touches a little bit on what Vinay was saying, and seeing as we've started off on such a sort of idealistic cosmic note this morning about like the possibilities of these things to really have sort of deep foundational sort of paradigm shifting changes in a lot of really important aspects of society, particularly around governance. I thought I'd just show you this. It's well worth reading the whole article, but just in terms particularly of what Vinay was saying, around networking and data, and the real innovation here is that we have everywhere there's network, there's data, and everywhere there's data, there's network. And you no longer have these sort of siloed versions of reality and brittle databases and like locuses of political control, right? So, I mean, you see that now, particularly in the sort of race toward machine learning and AI. Is that's like what's so deeply worrying about that, and why guys like Elon Musk are concerned, even though he's not a specialist in the field, is that it's clear to anybody who really thinks about it that the people who control the data are really Google and Facebook, and those are the people then who are like capable of like making like good AIs. And in fact, there's a lot of stuff on the go at the moment about using blockchains and open data networks. Right, some of the guys, there's a wonderful project called Big Chain DB. Which is super cool, right? And Trent McConaughey and the guys who are building it have just started something called like the Ocean Protocol, which is precisely for using blockchains to share data in these sort of like public and transparent manners, and share like good quality data and monetize it. Right? Very interesting stuff. I really like this particular paragraph because it's Simon at his sort of idealistic best, but it's essentially what he's saying is this concept of having data and network everywhere, and this that third iterative step that Vinay mentioned about like the fact that we've now got like actual computer code in the data network that everybody has a copy of, can run and verify at the same time, and so you get this global deterministic output in any kind of like program that you want to run, means like it's kind of like inventing religion for machines, right? In the sense that they know what's going on in each other's minds, in quotes, right? And it's not like in perfect biology where I can never actually like know what's really going on like, behind those eyes, right? They know exactly the states and the processing power and capabilities of the network because they're operating on the same shared machine, right? It sort of takes us back to what Gavin Wood was saying yesterday about this global singleton, which is a pretty shitty computer at the moment, but given the sort of history that Vinay's now gone over, and highlighting how 40 years ago we sort of had like building-sized machines of people walking around in white lab coats and carrying punch cards and crying when they dropped it. And my parents, in fact, programmed on punch cards for a little while. Right? My mom has a story about like putting together a whole like psychology like masters or something, and then dropping the cards and like literally spending like weeks trying to put it back together, right? And, like I get frustrated if it takes me like 2 hours to debug a program now. It's very funny to sort of see that in action. So that also kind of brings me to the next point, which is really status, right? And it doesn't have to be status, but the point about the stuff that's really like where why I want to sort of go into it at length is that it's all well and good conceptually to have data and network everywhere and have this sort of shift in terms of the paradigms of computing that we work with, but all of the rhetoric that you hear in the crypto space about permissionless innovation and financial access for everybody, right? Without these sort of massive prerequisites that depend so contextually upon where you're born and what kind of environment you were raised in. That's all well and good, but if I have to have like a really powerful machine or enough knowledge to know how to run a VM on some other server in order to like connect to a network, verify transactions, and maintain my security, you can understand that it's not possible for someone in Ghana or Kenya, like in all of the places that apparently crypto will save. When you read like CoinDesk or these other American publications, like it's not possible for those people to run that kind of software, right? It's not possible for them to overcome the educational barrier that it, like, so yeah, cool, we can strip away like identity and like these other sort of unfair playing fields in terms of who we allow in and credit history, who we allow into the financial system, but there's still this massive educational barrier. And so the trick here really is like, how do we get access to these networks onto tools that people use on a day-to-day basis, right? Like, how do you make it like habitual, right? So WeChat, if you've heard of that, right? It's here as well. I try to do like a big integration with Standard Bank. People, WhatsApp is kind of one of the markets, but WeChat's massive in Asia, right? Particularly China. They've got like over 800 million users. People spend far more time in the instant messenger than they do on any kind of social media. And like the reason that that's occurred is like WeChat is the sort of omnibus app, right? It's become a habit, it's not an app. And
it's kind of like the Ethereum VM. There's so much, everything is running on it. You can do anything on it.
Exactly.
I couldn't use it because it was like literally the entire app store in one thing.
Yeah.
And none of them worked properly.
I mean, it's fascinating, right? You can literally,
play games,
yeah,
listen to radio,
call a taxi, pay for the laundromat, pay for the restaurants, split your bill with people over WeChat in the restaurants. Like it's just like the options are endless. And in fact, like they're even moving from like a sort of like app store kind of thing where you have actual other apps running it to just having like sort of programs that run for the time that you need them, right? Like McDonald's, or like one of the first ones in the history. So, we need like that kind of access and that kind of access in those kind of tools to make this stuff like really usable for people around the world, right? To make it like an actual viable option beyond some clever techies who are mostly white male Westerners talking about like the possibilities that could be built with this kind of stuff, right? Like it's really, really key that we get this stuff into the tools that people use on a daily basis. And to me, like Status is really like the first truly exciting and solid attempt at doing that. So the whole idea behind Status is let's build entirely on the Ethereum Web3 stack and make not just a messenger, but an omnibus app that is your mobile gateway to these technologies and that can be used by anyone in the world that has an internet connection and a smartphone. And obviously that's still not ideal, right? Like feature phones are still a big thing across Africa, but it's a big step in the right direction, right? All of this stuff is incremental. And the thing that makes it really interesting is that it is built entirely on top of Ethereum, right? So you have this sort of like when you kind of open the app, let's make this bigger. Yeah. I'm still dealing with some weird names based on sort of like random key generation. But that's very much about securing your identity, making sure that's. So yeah, the app will open into like the sort of chat view, right? So you can talk to both like your friends. You can see that I don't have any friends, unfortunately. It's very sad. I downloaded the latest version of this the other day just to do some testing, and essentially, so yeah, you can chat to friends here. You can also chat to other contracts, right? So not just contacts, but contracts. And so like all of the D apps that are accessible through Ethereum, through like MetaMask is what we've been using to connect to Web3 and give our account information over to the sites that we've been looking at, like Ujo and Aragon. Like exactly the same thing applies to Status, except it's obviously sort of through the mobile. So you sort of you get both like web views of the actual D app. and some people have already sort of built chatbots for their apps as well. But Status is still in alpha and it's on the testnet, so not too many companies who are sort of like on the mainnet in production have built actual chatbots, right? Like it's very easy just to make a mobile site that will look good and work fine through Status, but like a chatbot is obviously like a little bit more effort. So the idea here is exactly let's build an omnibus app, right? Like your sort of gateway in. This is sort of one of my favorite projects in the whole space. So we discussed it like a little bit earlier yesterday, right? Committee. This idea that you can have like an open source tool which is intended to incentivize open source contributions. So you create an issue on your GitHub repo, it assigns, like it comes in, puts a little QR code there, people can like scan and sign up, and then like it assigns a bounty as soon as someone sort of submits a PR that you as the owner merge, then it will automatically like pay that person. Yeah, so like I have no doubt that sort of HR in the future and will be, you know, mostly done through assigning issues on GitHub and paying off open source contributions. At least that's the sort of dream, right? And it ties into what I was sort of saying about virtuous feedback loops and Norbert Wiener and some of the older thinking again from like early 80s, late 70s and before, like Claude Shannon information theory.
It'll be interesting what that kind of idea will do to testing, formal verification and stuff, because then everyone is going to be into it.
Yeah.
And just as quickly as possible. You want to be first, whatever is the fastest, not necessarily the best. So testing is going to be
a big thing.
Yeah.
So formal verification is something that's like they're working a lot on it at the moment. There's quite a bit of stuff. Let me see if I can just show you something. I think that this is like one, porosity is sort of like decompiling sort of code that's been put onto the network so that you can see like exactly like what's going on there and which contracts are vulnerable to hacks that have been discovered more recently in the deployed and various other.
Decompile the bytecode.
I think that porosity does. So it generates human readable solidity syntax from EVM bytecode. Yeah, it decompiles the bytecode. And so porosity is one, and there's a few other formal verification projects out there. This is just one that I happened to come across because like I've been doing a fair bit of work in Quorum, and they've sort of done some integration with Quorum there, which the Quorum guys. Formal verification, yeah. Like there's a Solidity debugger. I don't know, it's somewhere in my tweet history. I'll find it.
You just think how buggy, if I think how buggy my code is and how bad my tests are even when I'm trying.
Yeah.
Just imagine you need to now manage something where like everyone is incentivized, so it's not just idealistic people that are now contributing. People that actually want the bounty.
Yeah, no, I mean, look, you know.
So for the chat messaging, do you use IPDB or IPFS?
So this is sort of what I'm getting to. They actually use Whisper, right? So SHH, which is like a gossip protocol native to Ethereum. So it was also made by Gavin Wood, and he kind of like came up with the idea at DevCon 0. There's like a very funny video, you know, of them in Berlin. There was like 30 people there, and they were like, "Woo, Ethereum!" and
DevCon 3 is now.
Yeah, right. So that's this massive thing in Cancun. So you know, he came up with it then and didn't do too much work on it, but it got picked up by a number of others, and particularly Status now because they use it a huge amount. So like the idea here is that you can have like completely dark messaging. So completely. You as a user can toggle it, so if you want sort of higher performance and like a surety that your messages will get through and stuff, you can sort of like toggle like from completely dark to mostly dark. It is end-to-end encrypted, but you know each message gets assigned a TTL and sort of bounces around the network until it finds the sort of public key that it's looking for and can be decrypted by. And like they've been doing a lot of work on inboxing and like figuring out like how to actually get these messages, especially when you're offline, like how to sort of store the messages. These are not easy problems to sort of overcome, but they have made a huge amount of progress. So it's like, to me, it's really exciting that they actually use Whisper, because it's sort of the vision of like Web3, right? Like, can we build legitimately useful products on the stack of technology? Like I was saying yesterday, like Bitcoin is fantastic, and it solves the technical problem of the governance of money, right? Like we take monetary policy from like the hands of fallible humans, and again, like not a conspiracy theory or anything, right? Like just legitimately, it's very, very difficult for human minds, like single human minds, to like wrap around the complexity of modern society, right? And this was true even back in like the 20s and the 30s. There's this wonderful book called The Lords of Finance, which is about like the central bankers of, I think, the UK, France, Germany, and the US, sort of through the 20s and 30s, and into like the Great Depression, right, between the two world wars. And like these are like good and very intelligent men who were like legitimately, for the most part, trying very hard to like keep the economy going and stable, and they failed abysmally. Not because they're like the Illuminati and out to sort of like enslave the human race and be lizard people, right? But because these are just massively complex systems. So Bitcoin does solve that technical problem, takes it out of the hands of fallible humans, gives it to a deterministic mathematical algorithm, it treats it the same whether you're a farmer in Ghana or a stock trader in New York. And that's like an incredibly cool thing. But because, maybe simplified, I see the, but because of the richer scripting language in Ethereum, right, we have this ability to build like better apps, essentially, like more usable apps. And like this, for me, is like going to be like one of the ultimate tests. Can you use completely native Ethereum protocols to make a thing that people actually use on a day-to-day basis and like find value in? So yeah, it uses Whisper on the sort of chat, and in order to like, you're actually running your own sort of full node. So in scare quotes here. So what's going on is there's something called the Light Ethereum sub protocol. So this essentially what it does is it only checks block headers, and it uses something called like the CHT, which is the canonical hash tree, which is essentially like checkpoints in the chain that you can like check against, so that it becomes possible to run something approaching a full node with the security guarantees that come along with that on your phone, right? And so, like again, there's a huge amount of work being done here, and so LES is developed by someone called Zolt Foldy, and some of these Eastern European guys who reads bytecode for fun, I think. And there's also like an effort in this direction from the parity team called PIP, which is the parent team. I'm not exactly sure what that stands for, but like lots of people have recognized the need to like make these light protocols because having it work on devices and tools that people actually have access to all around the world. The only way to make sure that we begin to approach a place where like some of this rhetoric is actually like realizable and not just some good looking standing up on a stage. So yeah, completely native to Ethereum. You open up into a chat where you can talk with contacts and contracts. One of my sort of favorite screens is called Discover. So here I can sort of I can come in and like set a status. Let's do that, and sort of status, and so you can sort of be discovered on the network by hashtag. You can like finding other users on a decentralized network where there's no like single like database with like actual users like Facebook that can point you. Is quite a difficult problem again. So like this is a neat way of sort of being able to go in and find other people talking about similar things and sort of generate more of a social network around this. I expect that this Discover screen will sort of evolve as time goes along and do some interesting things. But there's a bunch of sort of DApps that you can look at there, and then also like a few public chats that we can sort of go in and see what people are doing. I don't think anybody's going to be online early on a Sunday morning We're probably the only crazy people. But yeah, public chats where like unfortunately it's quite difficult to like know who you're chatting to because it's obviously so like it'll come up as unknown contact unless it's somebody that you shared your keys with, and it's also sort of I suppose worth sort of showing you that you get assigned your own address and a public key, which copy that select clipboard. And Ruan, if you wanna be my friend, man, you can grab that public key and carry on. So yeah, Discover is very interesting. I expect it's it's quite a difficult thing to explain to people at the moment exactly what's going to happen there. But I actually think it's the most exciting part of the whole app, the ability to really like discover interesting things on the network that are applicable to you and what you're talking about is incredibly powerful, right? Because like you were saying this morning, like I'm always like a bit like reticent about developer courses, right? Because like the whole kind of point about being a developer is that like you are one because like you want to solve it yourself and learn, and like you know how to learn by yourself, right? But it's quite difficult with these kind of new technologies because there's such a dissemination of completely different information that you really just need to be like pointed in the right direction and be like, here are the best resources, and like you can go and discover more for yourself. And literally, like I see that Discover screen is sort of being that for everyone, and like, go and discover like more for yourself and have like a well curated list of resources.
Yeah, especially because time is fragmented. So you still in school and I want to do that. You don't need somewhere to start. You just start everywhere.
Yeah.
And then eventually you find someone else you can point them there.
Yeah.
But nowadays, getting time is a bit harder.
Yeah. No, absolutely. So what's what I want to do? I mean, this is just the contact screen. You can see like all of the sort of DApps that have integrated with Status. I mean, there are like you should be able to browse to like most DApps that exist. And work like on their Ropsten versions or their Rinkeby versions, the two testnets at least through Status. But these are the ones that are like have full sort of integration. Like Flight Delay Suck is quite fun, and they actually have a sort of working chatbot. Let's see if that's not it. That's in this version. But Flight Delay Suck is like an insurance app for flights. It's pretty cool. I've used it before. Unfortunately, my flight was not delayed, so they got my ether. That's and then also like they have a sort of native wallet. You can see I'm rich with Rinkeby ether, and here you can store like both ether and ERC20 tokens, and you can transact with ERC20 tokens from Status. So let me see. I haven't actually checked this morning, so this could go horribly wrong. But I really, I do hope not. Hopefully, the demo gods are with me. Let's check the science of this work. Aha! Yeah. So forgive me. This it's not. It's not a great site. We have an actual site, but for some reason, Status isn't playing nicely with my latest React version. So Ron, if you find me your address, I think it'll probably be in your wallet. If you can pop that in Slack channel. So yeah, like I was telling you guys yesterday, did I tell you this? So we for all our meetups, we host a bunch of meetups across the continent, and we just hand out tokens for free, sort of educational opportunities. So thinking of ways to maybe do an anti-ICO, which would be quite fun, especially given all like the scams and hype in this space to go and do the opposite thing. with the community-driven token will be interesting. But essentially, like this is our interface for sending it through Status. We do actually have a proper site which you can go and like play with. Once I send you some good tokens.
Not publicly,
No, if you, I think in your wallet, you should be able to find your address.
yeah.
Have some like, yeah. Huh.
I said share.
I think that we just need to put a 0. I'll see.
So your share doesn't add a 0.
Yeah, we can submit that as an issue because that's done. Let's see if that works. So yeah, and then like this is the cool thing about these tools, right? Having like so like I haven't written any of this, right? And I get like a really cool, slick user interfaces for like my Centrons. You can see like that's a really shitty site, right? Like that I just literally hacked together in like 10 minutes. But like the rest of it like looks pretty cool, and it's all because like, it all just works well together. I'm recording this so people probably don't steal my password. It's on me, and very chilled. So you get all of that for free, right? And you can like send ERC20 tokens. I'm not sure if like actually storing them is being implemented. It's, perhaps. And that's this is our actual site, just so you know. That's I don't just hack to get the terrible things. You can also come here and upload stuff onto IPFS if you want. You can't use the other fields to sort of save it to Ethereum because I'm no owner of that contract. But if you want to upload anything to IPFS, you can always just use it there. So what I sort of want to get into is how to actually build like one of these chatbots on Status. Advisor, it's done adverts. And yesterday, we went over and did a fair bit of work with Truffle and some of the recent developments there, and how much nicer it is, how much quicker it downloads. And just all of the things, right? Like much better debugging, much sort of smoother framework in general. So like I'm really, really loving working with Truffle at the moment, and they have this Truffle box. That's run if you want to like make a directory, cd into it, and then just unbox Truffle box status. I think that the unbox should do the npm install for you. That's at least my understanding of what it does when it sets up. So that'll probably take a little while. So yeah, like I say, there's sort of two options when you like developing on Status. You can either sort of like build a D-app that operates through the web view, right? And that's definitely like the simplest way of doing it because you can literally achieve it with like HTML, CSS, and JavaScript. And then the other way is to actually like build your own chatbots, right? And that's a bit more complicated. You're sort of talking to the Status API. Like the JavaScript is obviously like a little bit more complex in that setup. It is all JavaScript, but it is also like, while chatbots are much cooler and more powerful, and people like we had a hackathon, a global hackathon a couple of months back, and people built some really genuinely amazing things with like a pretty limited tool set at the moment. But essentially, what happens is that like you sort of write like a bot.js file and it gets run within an auto VM jail. So it's got like pretty limited access still to a lot of functionality that you would really like to have, right? So like deep linking in your app is not really possible at the moment. If you want to like scan a QR code from like your bot, which is like a really obvious use case, because it's in that jail, it doesn't actually have access like to your camera, and even if you've got sort of status access, like it's in the jail. So so those sort of things are quite difficult to figure out. There is a team of particularly clever, mostly Romanian people working on it. Also, the kind of people like Zolt who probably just love reading bytecodes over the weekend. But really, like really fantastic folks. So there are all sorts of requests, for deep thinking kind of stuff and that kind of stuff. And I'm sure that we will find a way to do it as we kind of venture further into this. So is it still unboxing? Fantastic. So here's my profit box. Yeah. Yeah. Yes. Yeah. It's generated. 100% sure. Let me just. Yeah. There's the. So they may be using that, and also, I mean, like, certainly, the plan is to integrate ENS, right? And that'll be good fun because then you can just find people by literally by name. And it's actually kind of worth discussing just a little bit of about ENS while we wait for that npm install to happen. ENS, so it's the Ethereum name service. You guys have heard of this? Essentially like DNS for Ethereum, but cooler because you can do sort of hash addressed content, and B, when you really start thinking about the possibilities of that stuff. If I sort of buy my own namespace, so andyturret.eth, then I can generate endless sort of subdomains beneath that and have contact.andyturret.eth, keys.andyturret.eth, finances.andyturret.eth, as many subdomains as I want. Each root protected by its own smart contract that programmatically handles actions toward that root, right? And that's just on a personal level, which that concept to me is completely mind-boggling. That is really it's the first time that I think I've actually grasped how important namespace might be as a thing, and what that could mean sort of 10 years from now. I mean, 5 years from now, who knows? These things move so fast. Oh, really?
20 years waiting for that thing to lapse and pay them time.
And has he done it?
Yeah, I eventually got it.
Oh yeah, patience pays off.
Now the people are sure that it was you from the beginning. Is it possible I can use your outcode?
Yes. I don't know if it's going to reach. That's you're going to have to snuggle up, yeah, Harold.
You told me this. If I saw it yesterday, I would have started fixing it. That's now.
Yeah, I need to go buy 4 already.
Cool. So yeah. Essentially, let's start at the start list thing. Everything is set up there. Right? Oh no. The 2.7. Cool. No, there's no rush on this stuff. So yeah, there are other apps that's particularly there's one called Toshi from Coinbase, which sort of works on the Signal messaging protocol, right, double ratchets, encryption, and that kind of stuff. And it will also allow you to store and send Ether, but they still work with servers, and they still have centralized data where they keep the information and even though they have the double ratchet encryption algorithm and stuff, and like it's all encrypted over their servers, you know, it's not what it could be, right? And Status really is kind of what it could be. There are some big technical barriers to overcome, particularly like data in South Africa, right? Like even though they're using LES and you can get up and running much quicker, and it takes much faster to sync the chain, and there's much less data. It's still like it's untenable. For, precisely the people that we're talking about, like I was saying earlier, like you can't run a full node with bad internet connection and lack of like proper machinery in Africa. Well, like you still like you can't expect people to spend all their data just downloading and syncing with the chain, right? So that kind of stuff has still got to be overcome. But in the sort of presentations that I give, particularly to excos and bankers and these kind of things, it's really incredible to be able to showcase stuff like this in Ujo and say like, just take a step back for a moment from like the immediate present and like how like this is still a little bit rough around the edges and whatever, but like just take like a slightly longer term view of this thing and see like how far we have come in 2 years, right? Around like the public launch of Ethereum was August 2015, right? Sometimes it's a little bit difficult to like maintain perspective in the crypto community because things move so fast the whole time. You're like, holy shit, like 1 month is the equivalent of a year back in the real world. But in just 2 years, we have we are very rapidly approaching consumer level applications which are essentially indistinguishable from the things that we use now, except they come with this whole slew of additional benefits, whether that's like privacy and encryption if you're like a developer and a bit of a nut about like realizing how bad it really is, or if you're just like a normal user who has never really like understood this cryptocurrency thing, but definitely understands a chat app and definitely understands like sending money over a chat app and can just do it now without needing to actually like sign up at a bank and have something approaching a credit history or like a government approved set of identity documents.
Does it require Python 3 or 2?
I think that at 2.7, that's my guess. That's what I've got installed on here, and it works. Of course, like the guy with the Android would have the Windows machine, which is difficult.
Yeah.
With the Mac, which works really nicely.
I've recently installed Python on the Mac, but I actually upgrade to 3. And it's quite a mission. Because it comes with 2.7 originally.
Yeah, installed, right? I don't understand the whole Python 3 thing. What actually happened with that upgrade and why?
I'm not a Python.
Yeah, like why there was why they didn't just like upgrade properly. Do you know what I mean? Like offering people.
I think there was just too much that was done, and they wanted to break and change. And usually,
it causes big issues.
Yeah.
Especially as
They've
something
got
is
a lot of
popular.
breaking changes, and you can't run.
Yeah, exactly. I've seen people raging about it on like IRC and stuff. Oh, goodness. Are you having a bit more luck there, Ron?
Yeah, it's struggled to download.
Cool. So I'm just going to talk briefly through like what you get in this box. It's pretty much like exactly the same as the most basic truffle box, which just comes with like this simple storage contract. Except it's mobile optimized, right? Like that's essentially what's going on in the Status box. And so you'll see like the simple list of simple smart contracts. It's literally allowing you to like get and set a value on the blockchain, along with migrations and all the things that we sort of went through yesterday. And this particular box uses Webpack to build, as you can see, and puts everything into the sort of public folder where it serves it from.
Sorry, why is that a unit? Why is it storing there?
It's just like it's storing some unsigned integer in like it's literally just like setting x to whatever you pass in.
I guess it's not a smart contract, Alex. What did you say? Sorry. Did you say
This is random data.
Yeah, literally, like this is. There's no points to the smart contract apart from like to test whether your chain is working, right? So you'll see when we fire it up, like if you get a value of 5, then you know, okay, cool, we're away. If it's 0, then you're like, okay, no, shit, this.
So you're just interested.
Yeah, it's just forget, yeah.
Okay.
And then, like I suppose the sort of most interesting thing, dive deep immediately because you know you can check through like the front end code and stuff yourself in the index file here, and go and have a look how it's sort of built from here. We've kind of been over this sort of stuff yesterday in terms of like getting the Web3 instance, setting the provider for your contracts, and then like just fetching your accounts, looking at the deployed instance, promisifying it all. So yeah, all of this stuff in source gets built into index, which is where it gets served from. The thing that's most interesting to look at is this start script, which generally we don't look at because it's ugly. But this comes with a complete start script to sort of like build status and run it onto your phone. So essentially, let's have a look. There's the insights, which is always nice to look at. I wonder where actually want to take you. We are building out a proper wiki where we're going to sort of centralize all of the content stuff. It's kind of been all over the place at the moment. But there's like Status comes with its own sort of inbuilt API, which is also written mostly in like JavaScript and Clojure. That's the app is written in like React Native and Clojure because functional programming is awesome. There's actually like this really. Do you guys you know the webcomic XKCD? There's a brilliant one like from XKCD about Lisp in general, and sort of like when I finally understood Lisp, this fusion of blue lights, and I was like, oh my god, this is truly the language from which the gods wrought the universe. And then like God rocks up and he's like, actually we hacked most of it together in Perl, but it would have been a good idea. So yeah, like there's a whole API that you can sort of call with this like status.command kind of thing, and this is how we build chatbots. So obviously, like you can build your own like HTML, CSS, JavaScript sites and just browse to it through a web view and have it work absolutely perfectly. If you want to have a bot, you talk to the API, and there's a whole bunch of options and stuff here and things that you can build. You can see that there's like extensive documentation about what's really going on there, and then some pretty neat tutorials on all sorts of different frameworks, right? So like doing it yourself, Embark and Truffle, which is the one that's we sort of going to be looking at. I say that they're good docs just because I wrote them. But you know, like these things will be moving over to the wiki very shortly. So what this box comes with first, and that's the other thing that you'll need to install before we can go. There's a tool for talking to the API and like adding and speaking between your phone and your machine called Status Dev Cli. It's the command line interface dev tool. So it's just an npm IG Status Dev Cli. Will get you where you need to go. And essentially, like what we're doing in the start script, right? There's a bunch of other stuff that's going on, like up here in terms of like setting a bunch of defaults. But it's really like it's only really like this message, this add to status thing that we're interested in. I suppose. It allows you to sort of pass it the actual URL that you're running at, but otherwise it just defaults to localhost, which is the easiest for development. And what's like the sort of, it's worth reading through the documentation, but like at a basic level, what you can do is you can add either a DApp URL or a bot URL or both. You know, if you want to have like a web view and a bot, like that's totally possible. The DApp URL will, you know, when I sort of when I open like commit eth, right, like it automatically navigates to the web view. So if you add a DApp URL, that's what will happen. And will immediately take you to the sites. If you just use a bot URL, it will open into the chat, and you can start having a conversation with the serverless chatbot, which is really pretty cool. And like there's a bunch of options that you have to sort of like have, which we're going to go through. Status.im installed there. So what you want to do is like in console. You I did what now? I'm sitting.
Windows is the paid version. What?
Okay, well if you're having too many issues.
Oh, I'll just follow.
Yeah. Windows, man. I'm sorry, I haven't tested the status stuff.
No, no worries.
This is actually the first time that I'm doing like a full status demo in these dev lines because they've just released 0.9.12 and they're like the main sponsor for DevCon. There's going to be like a lot of really fun and interesting announcements out of there. I think it must be like a few days. Yeah, we've been sworn, you know, blood oaths to secrecy, but there's some really exciting stuff coming up there. And this 0.9.12 release is great because the full wallet and transactions and stuff coming in, which is super awesome. So like essentially what we do is like through our console, which is like our control bot, we can sort of turn on debugging, which will like open the necessary ports to talk to status dev Kai. You can see that I was testing these ports today and it failed. At least their truffle box, but I'll show you some stuff. They've also got really great developer documentation now and a whole bunch of examples there, which is really amazing. We'll do that after the status stuff. So the first sort of thing that we need for these is our like our phone's IP address. This turns out to be important for sort of communication between the two. And we're going to do sort of very similar stuff to what we've been doing with Truffle anyway. But there's just like a few sort of minor adjustments that we need to make. So it comes with those contracts. Essentially, like conceptually, what we're going to do here is we are going to run like a test RPC network on our local machine, deploy the contracts to it. Because I'm working with an actual phone and not an emulator, we're going to do some just ABB reversing so that the right ports are talking to the right things. And then we're going to run that start script, which will add the DApp into status. It should pop up, and we should be able to sort of talk to the smart contracts that are running on our machine. You'll see us switch the node, because currently it's obviously listening to Rinkeby or Robston, and I wanted to listen to my machine. So there's a few steps that we have to go through here, but believe me that it's worth it. Sorry, let me just there's one thing that I need to do because I've already got installed. So. The same. Seriously? Huh. Yeah, because we're on the same Wi-Fi network. I learned something today. So I just want to, like each sort of DApp that you add gets given a unique ID, and I was sort of testing this last night, so I just want to remove, and we can fire it up. Cool. This is actually, I've got the big terminal there. So yeah, I'm just going to run test RPC here on port A546, just because A545 is what's being used by Status to talk to Rinkeby or Robston. And then from, in fact, I suppose let's leave this running so that you can see the transactions go through. I'm going to, obviously, the first thing that I need to do is sort of compile the contracts as per usual. In this particular directory, I've already done that, and then we want to migrate those onto the network. And it's just important to note that we've been over this truffle.js file before, but you can see that I'm making sure that I'm migrating it onto the test RPC that I'm running on 8546. That is like one change that you'll need to make. The box might come with that. So you can see that my transactions have gone through and the contracts have been deployed onto my local network. And now what I need to do is like set up, the node and the ADB stuff so that everything talks correctly. So it's pretty easy to sort of switch which node you're listening to with Status literally by saying switch node and passing in where you want it to listen to. So that's 8546. It's a bit annoying that you have to type the IP every time, but this is to make sure, I suppose, that you talk to the right device. So now it is listening to my local test RPC network where I've just deployed those contracts. Because I'm working with an Android phone, I just also need to reverse some TCP ports to make sure that it's got access to the right stuff. Oops. It really didn't like that. Let's see. There we go. And hey, someone replied to me in Status. Awesome. I'll show you that now. I just happen to know that the npm start scripts, it serves the that index.html file on 3000. You would no doubt serve this yourself first and discover that you couldn't access it. So this is just experience, and then then we should be ready, right? All we need to do the start scripts. Just see. The start script expects an environment variable, the device's IP, and then I should just be able to pass in the environments, like the IP of the device, and run the start script. And if we're watching Status here, there we go, we get our trufflebox Status because we use that dapp URL that opens automatically into this web view, and you can see that the stored value is 5, right? So I'm pretty sure that's that everything is working correctly there, right? And so I mean, generally this takes a little bit longer because people, it's sort of struggling with specific aspects, and you can tell that it is still rough around the edges. But it's kind of mind-boggling, right? That this is where you start as a developer, right? After 5 minutes, you've got a mobile-optimized box with everything in place for you to speak to smart contracts and start, building actual sort of business value into this stuff. And I mean, this is just the dapp part, and obviously, that's already extraordinarily powerful. The fact that as a developer, it takes me literally 5 to 10 minutes to set up my environment and start developing on my phone, but also on this global world computer. Obviously, not directly at the moment because it's on test RPC, but conceptually, right? If I was working on Rinkeby or Robston, that's exactly what I'm doing, right? It's a truly fascinating thing. And so what else I've done here, and this doesn't come sort of in the Status, the truffle box itself. You'll just sort of get the dapp and the smart contracts that will store a value of 5 for you. But I've also, in the public folder itself, I've added this bot directory. So what I'm actually like this is the simplest bot, which I generally sort of demo, and all it will sort of do is like this. It's sort of show you. It's the web view and the D app that's been added. The status.command object creates sort of suggestions in this bar here above the message, like the message input field. And so like this particular bot, which is not the one that's being served at the moment, because I've decided to go a little bit bigger and hopefully show you something a bit more interesting. But like that's this init request is the same. Like the greeter is what would appear there, and this sort of helps you choose greetings. You can see there's some various sort of like style kind of functions, and essentially it's going to offer you the option of like hello or goodbye. Right? So like in console, when I click debug, it had on or off, and that's exactly what's going on there. And then you can also, instead of like just talking to the like status.command stuff, you can just add a listener for various different things like on init, on message send, on message input change, like most of the sort of life cycle hooks that you would expect in JavaScript. And this one is listening for any message to send to it, that is sent to it, and it's just going to reply with some really flattering text which will make you feel good as a developer. What I've gone and done though is like the actual bot file that I'm serving is it's very easy to find. If you go into the status repos, into status react, which is so status go is like, again in Skeko it's like the back end. it's where the get client is, and where like it talks to the network. Status react is like the app itself, what people see. And if you go into resources, JavaScript, bots, you'll see like all the bots for status. Just think about open source, right? All of the bots are there. So like everything that controls the console, and like console, for instance, is like a pretty crazy bot in terms of what it can do, is like all there for you, right? You can go and like take this code and use it yourself and do what you need to do, right? There's some really like awesome stuff, particularly in that console. But the one that I've sort of put into my bots.js file is this demo bot. I'm just going to do some neat things for us, right? It will demonstrate like a few of the really sort of more interesting aspects of the stuff. So first up, if you take a look sort of down here beyond the suggestions, so on message send, it's going to look for like sort of an amount that you send it, and it's going to try and send a transaction just to yourself, right? So you sort of like the listener expects like parameters and context. So like I can essentially like just put context.from is going to be like my address, right? So like in the same way that Solidity has this sort of like global variables like message and transaction. Yes. We also like it's very easy to pull off the information you need about what's happening in a chat with like contextual stuff and the parameters that get passed in. So essentially you can see what's happening here is like the value that's being decided is taken directly from the message itself. That's why like you need to send it in the amount, right? And then the place that it's sending to is just based on the context of who sent the message, right? Obviously, if you were building a bot to sort of transfer between me and you, then it would be context.from and context.to. Same sort of thing applies. So if let's do that. If I give this a go. Let's see what happens. Cool. So like send 0.001 into the interface, like it immediately pops up a transaction. It's sending it to myself, which is completely useless, but like it at least demonstrates the flow of how the stuff works. Like immediately just send like 0.001 to the interface, straight up into a transaction, sign it, and off you go. We hope. This did work like a dream last night. Might just do it. The Wi-Fi goes a little bit slow. Demagogues have been really good so far. So.
Within a chat.
Yeah, and you don't even necessarily like have to have, but like I'll show you like a sort of action message now if this sign transaction. Did I type my password wrong? That's exactly. Yeah.
So for the next course, you guys can get them to say that
Oh really?
very message.
Yeah. When those on status, you're gonna have like a few
Most of the
problems.
stuff is being related.
Yeah, but particularly on the mobile stuff, right? Like I was saying, like that's why I ended up getting a Mac instead of a Linux machine, is because like I was building these apps, and you have to have a Mac to build on iOS. It's freaking Apple, like, but it's kind of what's required. So awkwardly, guys. Awkwardly. That's not going on. That's just. So yeah, it was seamless last night when there was nobody watching. But the idea is exactly that. I should just be able to type a number into a chat and have that sort of send a transaction to whoever I'm talking to. Perhaps even one day in like group messages and be able to specify exactly what you mean. It's just like running status and visor at the same time. I can see my phone screen here, but like visor sometimes just absolutely sucks out. Come on, visor. So while visor is suffering, you can see that's like the transaction did get signed and go through. I think it's actually visor that's causing the issues here. Sorry. So we got this message down here, which is you are the hero in a sense. That much ether to yourself. There we go. Haha. Right there. Yeah. So that's pretty cool. And like there's a bunch of other stuff going on in this file as well. So if I sort of like init request. And kind of expect some address, but that's just dead defits. Let's see if it. The point behind this example is really to show what it means to have like this action message. So you would have seen when you signed up, there like it asks you for your password and sort of has like this flashing thing, which is I think going to be like quite a big part of status going forward, like interactive chatbots, right? And sort of like more visual programming and stuff. There's a lot of things that these guys are planning. But I think these sort of like interactive messages are the first things that you tap and you put in your password. Like it automatically sets the context for you, right? Because like again, the arguments are so often with crypto and like PGP and all the stuff I've had before is that these things are so deeply user unfriendly. Like it's just very difficult to understand for non-technical people how to actually interact with the stuff. And if you do then have like an interactive button flashing message, like you tap it and like sets the context for you immediately, that goes a long way to actually sort of making these things usable. And you can see that's like all I'm sort of like doing here with these requests and responses is getting some information about, like the message ID that was sent with the Whisper ID, and sort of if there's a bot DB going on, it's just like a bunch of JSON information that's returned. I'm not actually sure why that JSON information is being returned, if I'm 100% honest. I was trying to figure this out 2 days ago for someone else, and I'm not sure that it's that it really should, but yeah, it's
Only just a response.
remote items, but
Yeah, yeah, exactly. Someone's left a console bug somewhere, and I've not been able to find it yet. Um, so yeah, this is to me radically and rapidly approaching like a world in which like access to these kind of networks isn't tools that people use on a daily basis. And obviously, like not everybody is going to want to go and develop their own serverless chatbots, right? But like it is freaking cool that you can. And I mean, like it's really like, so one of the guys in the Status Slack had this one thing that he said, where it's like it's about moving away from being producers, products, and promoters of networks that you don't own to being curators, creators, and contributors of value, right? So it's like this, like the original vision of the web, right? If you go and like listen to Tim Berners-Lee and these kind of guys, is that like everybody was supposed to have a website and like put it out there and like create your own stuff, and it was supposed to be this like communicative commons for innovation, right? And obviously, like it didn't really turn out that way because for a number of reasons, but one of the biggest ones I think that people don't often think about is the fact that like the protocols that actually drive value on the internet, right? HTTP, SMTP, FTP, all of these, this whole family of protocols, the IP itself, right? Was like it never was able to like capture the value that it's generated, right? And sort of put it back into protocol development and make things and like making things better for everyone. What ended up happening was that people built on top of those protocols walled gardens that gathered money for themselves, right? And with these new class of like decentralized networks, where there's data and network everywhere, right? And you have these virtuous feedback loops built structurally into the systems. It's actually possible, like to build protocols where like a lot of the value that is generated by the protocol is pumped back in to making that protocol better, faster, and more usable for more people, right? It's one of the big arguments sort of put forward by Protocol Labs and the guys who built IPFS, is that not only are they amazing because they've been able to come up with a way to do sort of like reusable proof of work, right? Like the valuable like consensus algorithm where they're having this like proof of storage space over time that is like also intrinsically valuable to the network itself. So you're not using this external, extrinsic like power use to sort of validate stuff in the network, but what you're actually doing to validate stuff in the network is also contributing to the network. Like that's an amazing innovation in and of itself, but they did so well to recognize that really like the first sort of generation of the internet protocols has generated billions and billions and billions of dollars of value, but it has not been sort of returned into the protocols and the idea of a commons at all. And that kind of takes us back to what Gav Woods was saying, is that Ethereum is a commons for innovation that is secured and incentivized by cryptographic tokens, right? And while it's not a panacea, like that little last caveat about secured and incentivized by these cryptographic tokens does make it significantly more interesting in terms of thinking about the ways that we can like have common protocols without necessarily a tragedy around them. And people sort of abusing them for their own ends.
Sounds like those ICOs are like walled gardens.
Yeah, very much so. That's
Centralized.
So yeah, that's the basics like around Status. Someone loves me, which is awesome. They'll make it into my my demo video, which is super great. I think it's probably Hutch, as our community manager, and yeah. So I think that's we'll take a break and then move into Uports.